An introduction to Pauper, the best budget format for Magic the Gathering. What is the Pauper format? Pauper is a format which only uses common cards, with the exception of a small ban list. Any card that has been printed at the common rarity level in a set or product may be played in Pauper. Other than that, Pauper is like most other games of constructed Magic. Decks must consist of a minimum of 60 cards with an optional 15-card sideboard, and so forth. But here's the thing, Pauper is an eternal format. That means that aside from a very small ban list, you can use any cards from throughout Magic's history, so long as they were printed as a common. There's actually quite a lot of power at the common level, and many players describe the Pauper gameplay experience as being much more in line with what they remember from their old high school days. But I haven't even said the best part. Pauper is cheap, cheap, cheap. I mean, you are only using common cards. The biggest, most dominant decks in this format only cost about $20 to $30 online, and only about $30 to $40 if you play them in paper. Come on, that's the price of a couple of event decks, and you can be playing with a top deck that'll never rotate out. Why doesn't Wizards promote this format more? Oh right, and Pauper is also a format where rogue decks and homebrewed decks make up a larger portion of the meta than most other formats. In fact, rogue decks and homebrews make up about 40% of the meta. Considering that you have access to almost every common card from throughout Magic's history, and that price is almost never a problem in obtaining those cards, Pauper is a homebrewer's heaven. So whether you net deck or homebrew, Pauper may just be the format for you. Where is Pauper played? Pauper is largely found and played on Magic Online, where it has a large and vibrant community. But the multiple appeals of the format are causing more and more people to play Pauper with real paper Magic cards at their local game stores. That's because all you really need are some friends to play with, or enough players requesting that their local game stores hold Pauper events and Pauper Friday Night Magic tournaments. Considering many of these game stores make most of their money from the sales of singles, encouraging Pauper play can be a great way to move otherwise stagnant cards from their libraries. How powerful is Pauper? The biggest misconception that players have is that common cards are dull, impotent cards like 2/2 Runeclaw Bears, 1/1 Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. Insert mandatory joke about Stormcrow here. The truth is that Pauper is an eternal format, and thus it's drawing from the deep depths of a vintage card pool, and the power level of common cards from throughout Magic's history gives us a wide range of both power and function. Remember that Lightning Bolt, Delvar of Secrets, Soul Warden, Counterspell, Squadron Hawk, the Urza lands have all been printed at common and are all playable in Pauper. This results in Pauper having a range of decks from those that are aggro-heavy like goblins or elves, all the way down the spectrum to heavy counter Magic control decks, or just plain grindy good stuff builds. But Pauper also changes with each new set. That keeps the format from getting stale. For example, the recent printing of a Gurmang Angler was a major shakeup to the format. And don't you combo players think you've been left out either. The list of playable Pauper combos is longer than you can imagine. This is also part of that rogue and homebrewer's paradise I was talking about earlier. The price of Pauper. Imagine honestly for just a moment that I told you you could build any deck you wanted from Standard, any deck you wanted from Modern, any deck you wanted from Legacy for only about $30 to $40. You'd probably flip your lid with excitement. And then what if I told you it's even cheaper to play on Magic Online, more like $20 to $30? Well, that's Pauper. Let's take a look at one of the most powerful, dominant decks in the format and see just how much it costs. Hey, what a surprise, it's Delvar. For many Pauper players, Delvar of Secrets is nowhere as powerful as our first playset in this deck, Cloud of Fairies. bring it in for 2 mana, then go ahead and untap 2 islands so you can cast more shenanigans. Talk about tempo. Delvar of Secrets is a card that seems to dominate every format it is in. From Legacy to Modern to the good old days of Standard Innistrad, Delvar is a top card in Pauper as well. This next one is a real favorite of mine. Ninja of the Deep Hours is super fun, letting us play him using ninjutsu for some combat trickery and card draw. This right here is a true blue ninja. Spell Stutter Sprite is a great flash encounter, and Spire Golem has an affinity for islands, which this deck is running 18 of. But in the end, it's all about flipping Delvar and locking down the board. Ponder and Preordain are common, and they're so powerful they've been banned in Modern to pretty much prevent you from doing this. And hey, while you're at it, snap back their creatures, untap 2 islands, and keep them from recasting with the solid 2 blue counterspell. Just counterspell. It was printed as a common in several editions, so you can play it here in Pauper, and it's got no drawback. But let's go for overkill with Deprive for another hard counter with minimal drawback as well. A couple mana leaks and a psychic barrier don't hurt either. Most people throw in 1 to 2 gush for when you start getting flooded in those inevitable grindy games. Sideboards, even in Pauper, are always very flexible, but some really good picks here might be Curse of Chains, Dispel, Hydroblast, another powerful common, Narcolepsy, Piracy Charm, Stormbound Geist. You can buy this entire deck, including sideboard, for $36 in paper. And this is a fully powered deck, one of the most heavily played and dominant decks of the format. But again, that's your by-the-books top-tier Pauper deck. For most of us, we build that deck as the deck to beat with our rogue or homebrew deck. There's so many possibilities in this format. Heck, one of my first Pauper decks ran Kumbai Witches. Can you believe it? It won, too. Oh, and there's one more thing that's amazing about Pauper. Community. What really inspired me were messages that I've received from players who had paper Pauper playgroups at their local game stores, or even just over the kitchen table. Pauper is a format whose community is made up of a great diversity of players. There's casual players, brewers, competitive-minded, and everything in between. This is because Pauper fixes so many of modern Magic's problems. It isn't financially restrictive. Net decking and homebrewing have equal ground, and you can build what you like and play what you love. Be sure to check out communities like the Pauper subreddit or the Pauper forums on MTG Salvation. I just love the discussions these groups have about new commons in a new set and their potential viability. Or just go over to MTG Goldfish and pick out a top Pauper deck online and buy it for the cost of an event deck. And then you're all ready to just sit down, log on, and play Magic Online today. I hope this video has been of some help to you. And this video was made possible only because of support from viewers like you on Patreon. I would not be able to be doing any of these videos per week, let alone 3 per week, if it wasn't for the great kindness and generosity of people. Giving even so little as $1 is actually so much to me. So thank you.